Dun dun dun. Welcome. Good afternoon. Sani Banani, Dumelang, Huimora, Bonjour. What again? Ekaro, Ekaso, Ekale, Ciao. Which other one should I say now? Yeah. All the languages, incredible that God knows them all and understands them all. Yeah, so you're welcome once again. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you could make it. I believe we're all doing well. It's a beautiful day here in South Africa. Yes, I am broadcasting from South Africa. And it's winter. Yeah, it is cold here. So you're welcome. And I would like to talk today on something about dwelling, dwelling. When we read our Bible, the Bible talks a lot about dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. And then even when we think about our day-to-day living, there is that whole thing about dwelling, But when you ask, where do you stay? Someone say, I live, I live I live here or I live there. I live in Sulere or I live in Omole or I live in Santon. I live in Randburg. But what does that really mean? And how does it differ from dwelling in a place? How does it differ from, being or dwelling, And it then brings us to the thought about being. We are considered human beings, and it's not human being like one of my mentors would say. It's not human being. It's not like been and done that. It's human being. So it's a continuous progressive. So what does it mean about being, and how do we relate being to dwelling, and how does that even talk to being present in the place that you are? Many of us are migrants, and we move. I mean, the world is becoming a smaller place. We're migrants, we move, we live in different places. For me, I was born and bred in Nigeria. I'm serving in South Africa, and South Africa has actually become my place of home. It's become my home. And in that way, my whole being, my dwelling place has become South Africa. But what does that really mean? And when we look at even where we live, many of us live in places, but we don't dwell there, right? We just live there. Even in some of us in our homes, we live. I don't even know if we live in our homes, because the average South African, especially from the previously disadvantaged communities, commute quite long distances, leaving home as early as 4:30 in the morning and probably not getting home until late in the evening, after the sunset. And even in Nigeria, I mean, I'm privileged, like I've said, to have experienced both countries in that way. So you leave home as early as 5:30. I remember visiting home, and a friend of mine, I traveled with her from mainland to the island, and she said, I leave home at 5:30 in the morning. It's still dark. Why? Why would she do that? Because of traffic. When we talk about urbanization and high density and high traffic volumes, there is no accident, there is no road work, it's just high traffic volumes. So she leaves home when it's still dark, she gets home when it's dark, right? So in such instances, can we say we actually live? And even at a deeper level, can we say we dwell in a place? If you live in a place, you engage with the place, you connect with the place, right? But if you dwell in a place, you become part of the place. Your whole being becomes part of the place. The culture of the place is imbibed in you. The product of the place, the nature of the place is something that your whole being connects with, right? The culture, your being connects with it because you dwell in the place, not just because you live there, right? Now, if we think about living in a place, there are many, apart from those who commute, even those who say, I'm not going to commute, I'm going to move closer to the place of work. I mean, research has shown that people live closer, or they take places where they will live closer to the places of opportunity. And one of the opportunities may be work, and another could be schooling, another could be even just sources of social services, like close to a hospital or close to educational facilities or even close to recreational facilities, because that is their need at the time. Now, if you move away from where away from a place which you may call home, right? And then go and live in another place closer to places of opportunities, somewhat you don't really dwell there. You just live, right? You just camp, almost like you just camp there. And then when the time comes, like we see year after year, when time comes to go home, when time comes for holidays, the end of the year, people move from where they live to where they actually belong, where they are connected, where they have identity, where they can be identified, where they can connect with the culture, with the ethos of the places that they actually dwell in, right? So there's that whole thing about where is home. Sometimes we discuss this and we say, where is home? As the generations go on, especially for migrants, the whole idea of home becomes distorted, right? I remember as a child when my dad would say, no, he didn't say it so much, but when he would consider where home is, or many of our parents, when they will consider where home is, they will be thinking of the village, right? They want to go inland. They want to go home to the village. But we are like, no, that's not my home. My home is where I grew up, where I belong, where I dwell, right? And then you now have another generation who have migrated even across the national borders, like mine, right? And then when I say I'm going home to Nigeria, my children are wondering, this home you keep on talking about, because they were born and bred in another place where they have a connection with, where they have dwelled, where they have been brought up, where they have been affected and even I say infected, affected by the community, the culture of the place where they have grown up. In essence, where they have dwelled, right? So it's not just about living in a place, but actually dwelling in a place, taking on the nature of that place, that you can now say, I belong to that place. I have a being. I am expressing my human beingness, if there's anything like that. Is there anything like that? Human being, where you are being, where you belong, and where you have connections with. Johannesburg is a very cosmopolitan place, and there's a lot of crime that happens out here because there's a sense of not belonging, of oh, I'm going to go back to my home. I'm going to go back to the culture that I understand. So that whole thing about dwelling in a place brings about a level of security. It brings about a level of community and of belonging, and even of progress for that place, because you belong there, because you dwell there. You don't just touch and go. Right? So we could look at it at a micro, macro, or even a meso level, whereby the meso level could be, I live in South Africa. Right? The micro level could be, I live in the Gauteng, right? So I'm concerned about the well-being of Gauteng. And then the micro level could be that I live in my house, right? And so because I live and I actually belong there, I dwell there, I imbibe, I understand, I know where the sun rises from, where it sets from. I know the birds that are singing. I know because I dwell in that place. And then it becomes important that we are able to connect with that place. There are some places in inland whereby even the ancestors are buried within the house, within the compound, because there's that sense of belonging and dwelling and being, being that human being that you are, not just a passerby in those spaces that we sit in. So why is it important? I think it's important because when we are able to dwell in a place, we look for the good of the land, right? You are connected to the challenges, the problems, the intentions, the profitability of the place where you dwell, because you have a stake in it, right? You have a stake, you have a connection with it, you identify with it, and so you seek the good of it, right? And then it takes us back to what the Bible says, that he who dwells, right, in the secret place of the Most High. What does that mean? It cannot be a touch and go, because we're looking again as that thing of dwelling, that thing of being, of existing in the secret place of the Most High, right? Says that one shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And that one would even be able to say of the Lord, he is what? My refuge and my fortress, because we dwell in that secret place. So we can look at it from both aspects: being, dwelling, where is home? Are you just living? Is it a touch and go? Or are you part of that community that you find yourself in? The more we are part of it, the more we find our being in it. We seek the good of the land. Just like the Bible tells us that we should seek the good of the land. We should pray for the good of the land. So where you find yourself, where you find that you are dwelling, you are connecting, you are not just, touching and going, but you are impacting, you're bringing out the good of the land through your own actions. The land will yield its goodness to you. Yo, sound like a preacher now. But I hope that makes sense to you. Let us seek the good of the land that God has given us. It is then for us to dwell in that place. So ciao. Thanks for stopping by. Be good. Bye.